Everyone. My name is Ruwaida Musa. I'm a lecturer at the University of South Africa, and I'd like to discuss a very important area, a very practical area in an individual's tax assessment, as we call it, called the medical tax credits. So this is a very specific area, something that all registered, taxpayers, individual taxpayers will have to at some point do for themselves or do it in their tax returns. So let's continue, and I will be explaining this section with examples, and the slides are up. So for anybody who needs to refer back to them for self-explanatory, it's right there. So without having to spend more time on an introduction, I'm going to get straight into it. Okay, so the 2022-2023 rates applicable to individuals for medical tax credits, you'll see I refer to MTC a lot. It's an abbreviation of medical tax credits. So for this year, we have 347 Rand per month for the taxpayer and who's the main member of the scheme. Also, 347 per month for the first dependent. Very, very important and a very confusing area for a lot is the first dependent. Who is the first dependent? It can be anyone. It doesn't have to be a spouse. It can be a mother, a father, a child, as long as the first dependent is a registered member of the medical scheme. So you yourself are the main member, then your first dependent is also 347, and each additional dependent thereafter is 234 per month. Remember, these rates are per month. So each additional dependent also means there's no limit on that. So you could have 10 registered dependents on a medical aid scheme, for example. Okay, two areas that we're going to discuss with medical tax credits are 6A and Section 6B, which is the additional medical tax credit. So we will discuss this with examples. So let's do a first example quickly, which says Paul is 48 years old. So, okay, immediately we know Paul's an individual, 48 years old, married out of community or property with Paulina. So Paulina is the spouse. 4 children. He contributes 60,000 Rand to a registered medical scheme. You're required to calculate the medical scheme fees tax credit, in other words, the MTC medical tax credit. But the correct full wording is medical scheme fees tax credit. Consider each of these scenarios separately. Scenario 1, we say Paul is the only member. Now, in the previous slide, I said 347 per member, remember, and it's only him, and it's per month, so 12 months. There's it, 4164. Scenario 2, we said 347 for Paul plus 347 for Paulina. Remember, Paulina is the dependent, so it's times 2 people times 12. Same 347. Scenario 3, we say only their last born child is a member of the medical aid, so that's one dependent. So it's Paul and Paulina at 347, 2 of them, 12 months, and then the last born child is a member, 234. Remember, it's one child only, one dependent, additional dependent times 12 months. Scenario 4 would be again Paul and Paulina and 2 youngest children. So it's times 2 of the 234. And then scenario 5 will be all 4 children. So this is ideally where you'll be looking at scenario 5, where it's Paul, Paulina, husband, wife, 4 children, 347 times 2 of them. So Paul is 347 plus Paulina 347 times 12. Then 4 children. For each of the children, it's 234, 234, 234, 234. So scenario 5 is your ideal one that we're looking at. That's your medical tax credit, and that's your Section 6A. Okay, remember, we're saying the main member as well as the first dependent on the medical aid scheme will receive a tax credit monthly of 347. In addition, all other dependents, those 4 children, each one of them will receive 234 per month. So that's your 6A that was discussed. Now, if we go to your 6B, which is your additional medical tax credit, this is where it gets a little tricky. So I think this is where this slide is very important, because there are 3 main categories of this additional medical tax credit, which is your AMTC. What happens here is there's 3 scenarios, but number 1 and number 2 are exactly the same in terms of calculations. So a person who's 65 and older, or a person with a disability. So the calculation is the same. It's all other persons who are under 65 years of age and not disabled with no disability. They have a different kind of formulation. So if you look at this formula, these are the 3 scenarios that you will get in any given case, not more than this. You've got to apply which category the individual falls in, and then from there, of course, you see which formula works in. So we're going to do a quick example again on these 3 scenarios. Paul is 48, married out of community or property. They have 4 minor children. contributes 5,000 a month to a registered medical scheme. The wife, Paul, the wife and 4 children are members of the scheme. He contributed for the full year. He also paid 24,500 towards QME. Qualified medical expenses are QME. None of them have a disability. Great. So if you go back, which one does it fall in? Of course, Formula 3, he's under 65, no disability. His taxable income is 220. You're required to calculate the 6B, which is your additional medical tax credit. Why did we give you all this of the information about what he paid for qualifying medical expenses, what he paid for the taxable income, and all of those nice things? Is because you've got to apply that to the formula on the previous slide. So if we go to this, under 65, without a disability, total contribution, we told you he paid 5,000 a month, so times 12 months in a year, 60,000. The formula specifically said 4 times your MTC. Where did we get the medical tax credit, that 19,560? We got it from the first example, scenario 5. 4 times that scenario 5 is what you need to first calculate. Then you need to say, okay, how did you get to that 19,560? Again, we've repeated it here for just completeness. It's your 347, Paul and Paulina, 2 people, times 12 months, 4 children, 234 times 12 months, 19,560. So 19,560 times 4. This is a formula. 4 times your MTC is a formula. You just got to plug it in. It is legislation. There's nothing that you have to know more than just 4 times MTC. 78,240. So it's less. Total contribution of 60 minus 78,240. Obviously, there's a limit. The limit is always your total contribution, so that would be nil. To this nil, you have to add the QME. We told you in the question, qualified medical expenses is 24,500. And to that now, you've got to subtract 7.5% of taxable income. Again, it's a formula given to you by legislation. We told you the taxable income is 220,000. 7.5% of that is 16,500. So 24, so it's nil plus 24 minus 16,500 is 8,000. But that's not where it stops. For anyone who's under 65 without a disability, it's 25% of that 8,000. So your 6B AMTC, the second portion of this medical tax credits, is 2,000. Remember, MTC was 19,560. AMTC would be 2,000 Rand. Okay. So the next scenario, which is your spouse, which is your individual who's with a disability or over 65 years old, very similar. It's the same formula. We've got a similar example here, which you can read through, and then we're just going to do the calculations. Remember, all the information is given here. Let's quickly go to the calculation. If it's a person with disability, very similar. Look at the first part is exactly the same. The change comes in here where we say 3 times MTC. Remember, in the first scenario, when it was no disability and under 65, it was 4 times MTC. Very, very important to note this 3 times or 4 times. Where do we get it? Legislation again. So of that, if you work out 3 times MTC, you get to 58,680. Difference is 1,320. Add your qualifying medical expenses, 24,500 gives you 25,820. This is where the difference comes in. Just take 33% of the 28,340. Your AMTC is now 8,598. Your MTC stayed the same, 19,560. Remember, your AMTC, additional medical tax credit, now the 6B went to 8,598. Okay. This is another example, 65 years or older. Same formula, like I said, because he's 65 or disabled. Let's plug in all the amounts into the formula. It's exactly the same. Comes to 8,598. Okay, so the formula used when the member, his or her spouse or his or her child has a disability as defined in the formula, or when the member is 65 years old or older at that time. So I'm hoping that this little quick, 9-minute explanation has helped you in assessing as an individual how to calculate your medical tax expenses for the year when you're an individual registered taxpayer. Very important is you need to ascertain, are you under 65? If you're over 65, is it a disability or not? And based on that, you need to slot in these amounts into the formula given by legislation. And on that note, I thank you. Again, my name is Mrs. Musa, Rueda Musa, and I thank you for watching this video. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.